What a year it has been. It is August, and NASCAR only just now confirmed the remainder of the 2020 schedule and is implementing a brand new rule change. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. Hope you all are having a good week. We've got the Michigan doubleheader right around the corner. Today, NASCAR not only revealed the remainder of the 2020 schedule for the Xfinity Series, the Truck Series, and the Cup Series, but they also introduced two new rule changes to be used effective immediately for the remainder of this season. So we have a lot to get to, and oh boy, leave it to NASCAR to take something that should be simple and just overcomplicate the hell out of it. We've got a lot to get to. We'll start with the simple thing. We'll start with a look at the revised 2020 schedule, the remainder of this year. Here we go. Here are the final, 10 weekends of the NASCAR Cup Series season. If you notice, all weekend races, no weekday races are scheduled. As you can see, these are the final 10 races of the Cup Series schedule, which means this is what the playoffs will look like. Really no change on the NASCAR Cup Series side of things. First round will be Darlington, Richmond, Bristol. That's going to be crazy. Second round will be Las Vegas, Talladega, and the Roval. My goodness, Dega and the Roval back-to-back is going to be mayhem. And then the round of 8, Kansas, Texas, Martinsville, leading up to a Phoenix championship weekend. A couple notable changes, though, for trucks, for example. Darlington has been added to the Truck Series schedule, a track that was not supposed to be on their schedule this year, but September 6th, the trucks will race as part of a Sunday doubleheader with the Cup Series. They'll sort of be the opening act for the Cup cars that Sunday at Darlington. That's going to be cool. You also see the trucks will be at Richmond. Also, Talladega has been added to the schedule for the Xfinity Series, so that weekend has gotten a little bit busier. I'm bouncing all over the place here, but also interesting that the first 4 races of the playoffs for the NASCAR Cup Series will be night races. The Truck Series playoffs will start at Bristol. That will be their first playoff race. Remember, the trucks and the Xfinity Series run an abbreviated playoff schedule. They do not run 10 full races the way the Cup Series does. Meanwhile, Las Vegas will be the first race of the playoffs for the NASCAR Xfinity Series. So by adding an extra couple of dates for the Xfinity Series and adding a couple extra dates for the Truck Series, this helps make up for some of the other races earlier in the season that had been canceled. So both series will be very close to running their full intended schedules as far as number of races is concerned by the time the end of the season rolls around. But yeah, I know there's a lot of information there. As far as the Cup Series is concerned, not a lot of changes whatsoever. There's rumors that Las Vegas and Texas might swap dates. That never happened. As far as whether or not fans will be allowed to attend any of those races, NASCAR has been fairly quiet so far. Texas Motor Speedway actually is the only track I've seen that's publicly said, yes, we are going to allow fans for their November race weekend. Oh, sorry, this year it's in October. I forgot about that. They're selling tickets for the Sunday doubleheader between the Trucks and the Cup Series. So that day we'll have fans, an undetermined amount at this point, but no other race on the schedule that's been listed so far has said whether or not fans will be allowed to attend, and if so, what capacity that would be. So still a lot of unknowns, still a lot of question marks, but there you have it. At long last, the remainder of the NASCAR schedule has been confirmed. A lot of people are still wondering when the 2021 schedule will be revealed. At the beginning of this year, they were planning to announce that back in April. We're obviously many months removed from that. It sounds like perhaps later this month, perhaps at the end of August, NASCAR is hoping to reveal the remainder of the 2021 schedule, aside from the couple of dates they've already announced, like the Daytona 500 and Nashville Super Speedway. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll know for sure what's happening in 2021. So much unpredictability, so much uncertainty, but kudos to NASCAR. Assuming everything continues to go as well as it's been going so far, Cup Series is going to get all 36 races in, plus the All-Star race. Xfinity Series, Truck Series are going to be really close, if not right at the correct number of races. And that's huge for a lot of the race teams that rely on running the races and getting them on TV to get paid by their sponsors and to stay in business and stay operational. So great credit all around to NASCAR. If this final schedule actually holds true and we don't see any catastrophic issues down the road, great job by NASCAR to limit the effects of just an overwhelmingly bad event overall. Anyway, I don't want to dwell too much on the schedule because NASCAR also is introducing two brand new rule changes that we're going to see implemented for the remainder of this season. We'll start with the one that I think is fairly easy to understand because we've already kind of seen it at play in the All-Star race earlier this year. This morning, NASCAR announced that the choose rule, the choose cone, whatever you want to call it, is going to be used at every race this year except for the road courses and except for Daytona and Talladega. That is for everyone, the Trucks, Xfinity, and the NASCAR Cup Series. The choose rule, of course, made its NASCAR debut at Bristol in the All-Star race last month, and While it sounds like I was at the race in person, so I didn't see the broadcast, but it sounds like FS1 did not do a great job of explaining the rule or even showing it happen, showing drivers pick their different lanes. I would hope NBC is able to do a much better job, but being there in person and watching the drivers, with the 1 to go, or I guess it was the 2 to go in that case during cautions, being able to pick whether they want to run the top or the bottom lane for the restart was fascinating to watch. It was fascinating to see how that strategy played out for certain drivers, especially late in the race, and so I'm thrilled to see this rule implemented long term. I'm not usually a big fan of NASCAR making a rule change in the middle of a season, but in this case I think this is a very welcome change. This is something we saw really work at Bristol a few weeks ago, so I'm happy to see this going forward, especially when the playoffs roll around and every restart can matter that much more. Giving drivers the opportunity to pick whether they want to start in the top or the bottom, regardless of what running position they're in, giving them the opportunity to choose their own destiny. I am a big fan of that, especially when we get into the playoffs, we get into crunch time, and every position, every restart matters that much more. I'd hate to see a driver get screwed because he just has to restart in the wrong line on a restart. It's just, I'd like to see the drivers have options. And so that's what we saw at the Bristol All-Star race, and I love that NASCAR is instituting this rule going forward. The way the choose rule works, once again, for people who may not understand it, is when the cars are rolling around under caution, when they get the 1 to go, 1 lap before we go green and everyone starts double filing up as they do now, there's an orange cone in some cases. It looks like now it might just be like an orange kind of logo on the track by the start-finish line. And as the drivers pass by the start-finish line, they have to choose whether they're going to drive to the left of the cone or the right of the cone, ultimately electing whether they want to start on the bottom or if they want to start on the top. And each driver, one at a time, is going to get that choice. So traditionally, the leader gets to choose what lane he starts in, but beyond that, odd numbers start on the bottom, even numbers start at the top. Doesn't matter what you want. Now, the third place driver in line has the opportunity to start on the bottom if he wants, or maybe start at the top. And there's an opportunity to maybe move up a row or two, depending on what people do in front of you, but you might start in the non-preferred line. So it's just kind of a risk-reward situation. You might be 6th in the running order and get to restart kind of in like the 3rd position traditionally, down the bottom lane, but if the top lane is way more preferable, it still may not work out for you. But that's a risk now you get to take if you want to try it. And so I love putting this in the drivers' and teams' hands, giving them the option to restart in the lane they want to, even if it may be detrimental to their initial restart position. I think it's smart. Too often we see the guy restarting 4th have a huge advantage over the guy restarting 3rd, and that's not fair. So I'm a fan of this rule change. Again, it's not going to be used at the road courses or the super speedways, which of course makes sense. The super speedways, I think lane choice ultimately doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It just depends on which lane gets pushing fastest. So yeah, I think this is a great experiment by NASCAR. I hate to use the word experiment when we're going into the playoffs and it's crunch time when big money's on the line, but I think it's going to work, and I think drivers are going to be fans of it, and I think fans will come to love it sooner rather than later. But that was not the only rule change that NASCAR announced this week. Also today, NASCAR announced changes to their random draw qualifying procedure. Of course, since the pandemic hit and NASCAR's returned since mid-May, they have not run qualifying, at least in the traditional sense. They've not had single car runs. They haven't had drivers qualify on speed. They've been using really a random draw to determine the starting lineup for each and every race. The system they've been using isn't entirely random. The top 12 in points will draw for the top 12 starting positions, and then 13 through 24, and so on. But still, ultimately, your starting position for each race has been determined by ping pong balls, and we've seen Eric Almirola win like 3 or 4 poles as a result of just luck. With the playoffs rolling around and with each round being kind of like a shortened season, like every round of the playoffs is basically just a 3-race season, so every point matters more, every stage point even matters more, and with the first stage of some of these races being awfully short, especially if we look at the trucks and the Xfinity Series, where you start matters a lot. I argued that NASCAR should change the random draw qualifying format for the playoffs. Of course, I would love to see NASCAR bring back traditional single car qualifying, but I understand given the circumstances, it costs extra money to have a backup car prepared, to have extra guys at the shop to be able to, or at the racetrack, I should say, to be able to switch the car over from qualifying trim to race trim. There's extra time needed in the weekend to have both sessions. I understand that with where things are at right now, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to force teams to qualify at this point, but I wanted to see something change before the playoffs roll around, and NASCAR heard us, heard me, heard all the people who are saying the same thing, sort of at least. NASCAR today introduced a pretty complicated formula, and yes, they used the word formula to determine the starting lineup for each race going forward, or at least starting, not this weekend at Michigan, but starting with the Daytona road course here in a week. The formula will use 3 performance metrics, which will be weighted and averaged to determine the lineup and pit selection order. And these 3 metrics are Finishing position from the previous race, that's going to be weighted 50%. Ranking in team owner point standings, that's going to be 35%. And then the fastest lap from the previous race will make up 15% of this formula. Oh God, there's going to be a lot of math involved. So anyway, NASCAR is going to look at each driver and is going to weigh all those numbers against each other using that formula, I suppose. And that's how they're going to determine the starting lineup for each race on a weekly basis. Again, beginning with the Daytona road course here in just about a week. That's a lot of math. Of course, NASCAR would make this as complicated as they possibly could, but I mean, at least looking at it, it definitely seems more fair than just straight up a random draw. It's not in a form that I think NASCAR fans can easily watch for, you know what I'm saying? Like earlier this year when they were doing midweek races and we'd be watching obviously the battle for the win, but late in the race we'd be watching, you know, who's running 20th, because we knew for the next race the starting positions, they would be flipped, so the 20th place finisher would actually start first for the very next race. So we were kind of watching that 20th place battle. It was something that at home a casual fan or even a hardcore fan could easily sit back and watch and be like, all right, I'm watching for 20th place. Oh, okay, I see Ty Dillon's in 20th place, good for him. With this complicated formula, I mean, it's not a super complicated formula, it's pretty simple math, but it's math that if I'm a fan watching at home and I want to know, watching this race, who's in the best position to start first next weekend, I'm going to have to get out a pen and paper. I'm going to have to write down a lot of numbers. I'm probably going to need a calculator, and I don't see many fans doing that. I think most fans are just going to wait until Wednesday or Thursday when NASCAR hands down the starting lineup for the next race and just says, hey, we did all the calculations for you. Here's who's on the pole. So in that sense, it's not going to be any different than how it is now. We all just wait until like Thursday for NASCAR to release the starting lineup via random draw. It's going to be the same way, except at least now it's not going to be entirely random like it has been for most of this season. So I do like that. So overall, I don't hate this formula. I don't hate this way of doing it. I just wish it wasn't so complicated. So as an average fan watching at home on my couch, I could kind of follow along and keep track of some of these things. Maybe it'll be easier than I'm giving it credit for. Maybe it will be an easier thing to calculate. I mean, I guess if we know if, like, you know, Kevin Harvick is second in points and then he wins the race, we know those are the two most important measures. We know he's probably starting on the pole for the next race. I guess there's things like that we can look at, but I don't know. Leave it to NASCAR to come up with the most complicated way of determining a simple metric. Anyway, there you go. That's really the news for today. A lot of things being handed down from the NASCAR higher-ups today. It's been a very busy news week. I still have a lot of things I want to catch up on from earlier in the week. I might have a video up tomorrow where I do just that. Hopefully we can just go like a day without NASCAR dropping some bombshells on us, but there you have it. That's all I've got for this episode. Thank you all for watching. Subscribe if you are new. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram, of course. And as always, a big thank you to my amazing Patreon supporters. I could not continue to do this show without their continued support of the show, of the channel. If you also want to support the show, check out that top Patreon link down below. I greatly appreciate it. Fingers crossed we'll have a video up tomorrow, but thank you all for bearing with me. I appreciate you all watching this video. Let me know what you think of all of NASCAR's new rule changes. What do you think of the new schedule? Going to be a crazy sprint to the finish without a doubt. Thank you all for watching. See you again really, really soon.